Oh, sorry. It's recording.
It's recording. Great, wonderful. Okay, please mute yourself so we don't have any disturbing noises in the background. We did our introduction. Doug will do this himself afterwards. Some advertising on events. So there will be another PowerShell user group Experts Live Cafe cooperation thing. In May, we have invited Danny Martins from the product management team from Redmond, and he will talk about PowerShell and the future of OpenSSH, which will probably remove or replace the old remoting technology. There is as well a Experts Live conference in Linz, Austria, as every year. Please go to www.expertslive.at. Watch out for details. We are about to finish the schedule and the speakers. So in April, there will be a schedule online. We have an AI track, we have a security track, and we have a infrastructure track, mainly Azure. So I think there is something for everybody. Yeah, today Doug is presenting his approach, his story of the journey with ChatGPT and AI and PowerShell, but I don't want to say more about that. He will do this as well. There will be demos, and if you want to ask some questions, please do this in the chat. Patrick Wallmüller is the chat master. He will watch it, and if there's something we can discuss, he will jump in and ask the question to Doug. So this should be fluent, this should be easy, so that everybody learns something about it. And with this, I give the word over to Doug, so you can start presenting at around 10 before 6 o'clock. We will wrap up and close this session. Doug, awesome. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Roman. Appreciate the invite. Appreciate coming on and talking about one of my new favorite topics, which is AI. Always love talking about PowerShell. And I think you said we're going to be on tape. I think you're showing your age like me. I was like, oh, good. Yeah, we're long past the tape, but I remember those days. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about PowerShell scripting transformed, the impact of ChatGPT and AI. I'm going to go through a few slides, and then I'm going to be demo heavy. Definitely feel free to jump in with any questions at any time. If you have a question, I'm sure other people have it in their mind as well. And if it's the question is coming up in a slide or a demo, I'll hold off. If it is a question that is going to fit what I'm talking about, I'll divert and discuss it. And if it's something that's not, let's put it in the parking lot and talk at it at some other time. I don't think I have a real slide about who I am. Here's ways that you can catch up with me. I'm on the X platform, GitHub. And in fact, you can, if you wanted to take a look, AI Assistant is the new one. In making edits during the demo. I love it. So I have a YouTube channel. So if you get onto that YouTube channel, and I'll post it in the chat if you don't mind, get on there and you can subscribe, get notified. When I post videos for the meetups I do, as well as other tech videos. I guess a quick introduction of who I am. I'm a Microsoft MVP for 15 years. I got that back, I guess, in 2009 because of my public work I did with PowerShell. And I cover lots of different Microsoft technologies, AI being one of them. So I've been in the industry for many decades. I wrote a book called PowerShell for Developers. That was a while ago. And yeah, so I also run the New York City PowerShell meetup. I do it virtually. And in fact, tomorrow, I don't know how many folks know Jaap Brazer. I don't know if I pronounce his name correct. I always ask him. And tomorrow we're going to I do a segment called 2.5 Geeks. And he and I will get on and talk about AI. And we'll chat about AI and with AI. So that'd be cool if you want to join. So you can get on my meetup and RSVP, get the link. And then because of this demo I'm doing today, there's one, if I can get to it at the end, I know we only have an hour, so I'm gonna have to try and talk really fast. So I hope I make sense as I talk. Friday, I'm gonna do a live stream, how to create a data science AI assistant with PowerShell. So I'll do it live. You should, if we get to it by this one, it'll be at the end of this presentation. But if you want a deeper dive, we can do that on Friday. Okay, so I like to open it up with embrace the power. AI is an emerging skill. A lot of people talk about this doomers, AI doomers. They think it's Skynet. They think it's the Terminator. We're all going to be taken out by AI. Other people think it's just a spell checker. It just completes words. That's it. I don't agree with either points of view. And as my graphic says, AI will not replace you. A person using AI, the matrix, a person who knows how to use AI will replace you. So this can take a person who's pretty good at stuff and make them even better. And hopefully we'll demonstrate some of that stuff. The matrix works for me anyway. We're in a simulation, but that's a philosophical discussion. So when talking about AI and ChatGPT, and there's lots of different variants, there's Mistral, there's Anthropic, there's Claude, there's Gemini, all that stuff. You can imagine working with GPT and AI as a highly capable assistant or a really smart intern that has read everything in the world. It's always on, it's efficient, and it's mostly accurate. We'll talk about that a little. It makes humans scalable. Handling large volumes of work is one of the possibilities. And basically, you could free up your talent to do other things that are more important. Hopefully, we'll see some of that as well. Just as a note, time it took to go to 100 million users. So ChatGPT was introduced November 2022. So that's over a year and a half ago. It took 2 months to go to 100 million users. It took TikTok 9 months, right? So it was a pretty quick ramp up. Since that release, we've gotten numerous other releases, which we'll see some of today. And yeah, it's not going away. And don't believe the hype that it's going to destroy us, and don't believe the hype that it's going to give us a utopia where we all can sit back and take a nap. I don't believe either of those are true. If you want to play along, if you have your PowerShell window open, you need two things. You can do an install module, PowerShell AI Assistant. Okay, and that'll get you the code, and that gives you all the connectivity to the OpenAI backend. But you also have to get an OpenAI key. And just yesterday, they changed their model. You have to give them a credit card, and you can buy credits. You can say, give me $5 credit, please. And then you can interact with it. And when the $5 runs out, you can up it again, or not. There's instructions on the AI Assistant repo, or if you actually run the command the first time, it'll tell you that whether or not if you have your key set, it'll work. If it doesn't, it'll tell you how to do it. Also on that GitHub repo, I have videos. I have videos on my YouTube channel. They're all pointed to my YouTube channel, so you can go to either place to look those up on how this works and whatnot. Now, I didn't invent this. What I did was I took the OpenAI Python SDK. So one of the things that they've done to democratize using AI is not only do they put these models in the cloud, specifically Azure, and make it all available, they also made a REST API so that you can easily interact with it. So almost every programming language has created a .NET, C# has took the SDK, and they're calling the same set of APIs. And I said about a year ago, I said, hey, this looks like fun. I'm going to try and build it all in PowerShell. And I did, and it works. And so I didn't invent any of this. I'm just looking at the Python code and porting it, and then renaming things so it looks more natural in PowerShell. Anyway, so OpenAI has set the direction. Every other GPT that you see, or LLM, which is a large language model that you see coming online, all follow their methodology. So it's very interesting. So also, kind of sum things up, ChatGPT is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So that might happen today. It's a non-deterministic approach. Some people hate that and think we should just toss all this out. I think the fact that it does hallucinate and confabulate is a feature, not a bug, especially when you want to do brainstorming. And ultimately, you are responsible for what you use in production with this tool. And if you don't read the code, would you go up to Google, search for a solution, or go up to Stack Overflow, find some answers? Would you just take that code, drop it in, not even try it, or think it's going to work, and then just push it into production? Hopefully not. The same thing with ChatGPT. Just because it's AI doesn't mean we should get rid of our biases, meaning, oh, it's a programming thing, so it's got to be right every time. Absolutely not. So keep an eye on that. There's a new conference I just saw that came online. It's in Brazil. I'm not going to go to it or present. But these are some of the questions that they're asking. These are topics that they're interested in. And I just highlighted 3, how to integrate legacy software with the future of AIware. So now the AIware is like they're coining it as like software, as an operating system. So how are we going to integrate the legacy stuff with this new stuff? What roles do autonomous agents play in the development and maintenance of software in the FM meaning foundation models era? Foundation model is like ChatGPT, again, Claude, Mistral, Phi 2 that came out of Microsoft. And then last, what kind of release engineering practices do we need for this foundation model powered software applications? Are LLM ops comprehensive enough to capture the release engineering needs of AIware in the FM era? All great questions, things to ponder. If you're interested in thinking about it, this is good. I think it's great stuff. But this is kind of where Microsoft and Google and Amazon, they're all thinking about these things. AI is going to change a lot. So I could go on and on, but we're going to do some demos. We're not going to talk about the MVP Summit. We're not going to talk about Build coming up in May. We're going to see a lot more coming out of Microsoft, as well as OpenAI hasn't done a release of a new model for quite a while. And I think we need to buckle up because the next pieces that they deliver are going to be really interesting. Again, catch up.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I think what we can say is at the MVP Summit, everything was AI. So if you didn't have a session with AI in, it was really hard to get a slot. So this will take Microsoft time for the next few years, I guess.
Good point. And in fact, I just saw the Kubernetes conference, and saw a lot of people responding about the Kubernetes conference that just took place, and they said everything was AI. So on that note, let's do some demos. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, let's do it this way. Let me ask this question. Is it okay if I go a little bit long today? Well, we'll wait till see where I end up, but I'm happy to go long. This topic is really cool. So
good with us, I guess. So I have time.
Okay, and if people want to drop off, or you want to just tell me to stop talking, an hour. This could be a 5-hour topic, but I won't go that long. So this is ChatGPT, right? Up on the top left. I don't know how many people. Type a 1 if you've used ChatGPT on the web in the chat. Make this interactive if possible. So ChatGPT 3.5, awesome. We got someone who's played around. So ChatGPT 3.5, awesome. Hey, Chrissy, how are you? So Chrissy just wrote a book. She just delivered a book through Manning. Awesome. We got a bunch of Clayton. What's going on? Yeah, so you should check out her book. And guess what, Chrissy? I can't remember the exact title. AI and IT and all that kind of good stuff. Yeah, so if you want to drop that title in there, it'd be great. Anyway, so this is the free version. This is 3.5. Ralph, I remember your name. Probably, yeah, I don't.
We speak later. We speak later. Cheers.
Awesome.
Good to see you back, mate.
That's the burden of being a veteran, remembering all the names.
Exactly. Generative AI for IT pros. Yep, definitely get a copy of that book. Check it out. So 3.5 is the free version. So I have opinions about this because 3.5 is great. We'll show a couple of things. A lot of people use the free version because they don't want to pay the $20 a month. I do pay the $20 a month, and that's why I have access to GPT-4. There's been a lot of things, Chrissy can attest to this, that there's been changes in the 4.0 model that makes it, it changes how you work with prompting. But people who use 3.5, you really don't get the full flavor of what the capabilities are. But so it's not as capable as GPT-4. Also, I'm not going to show this at the moment, but GPT-4 is also comes with DALL-E, which is the image generator. It does browsing. It has the Bing search engine as a tool connected, and it has the analysis connected to it, which is a code interpreter, which is Python running in a sandbox way. So let me try some stuff here. Let's say, what can you tell me about elephants? Now, basically, all these models have been trained on all written text over human time, thousands of years. It's done everything before Socrates, after Socrates, every topic, textbooks, whatnot, web pages, code. And you can see here, I can just ask, what do you tell me about elephants? And it says, okay, they're fascinating creatures, the species, the characteristics, the habitat, all kinds of cool stuff. And then I can ask something. Now I'm in a conversation with the model. Can an elephant pull a tundra? See what happens. Okay, I didn't quite want that, but that's correct. So we went with the tundra as being a landmass of sorts, and let's change it to my tundra. So by asking it my tundra, it knows that it's about a Toyota Tundra, even though I don't have one. So you can call this, we call this in the industry, this is inference, or it's doing reasoning. And I think of it as it's thinking, right? So it knows based on the conversation, right? I asked 3 things, right? What can you tell me? Can you pull a tundra? And it immediately went for a tundra, what it can mean. And it, as you note, it also thought it could have been Toyota Tundra. And then I specifically said, I said my tundra, and it came back and talked about a car and talks about a bunch of different things. It would be beyond the capabilities of an elephant. So this is what you can use ChatGPT for, or this is how some of the interactions you can do. Let me do this and ask the question, what was the January 2024 employment? Let's see. And it comes up and says, as an AI, I don't have access to that. And that's great, because it's only been trained into 2023. It doesn't have access to real-time information. A lot of people at this point say, this thing's useless. I need real-time stuff. So I could show you how that works, because we have browsing in GPT-4 that costs $20. I could show you how that works, and then it would actually go out and search for it. Instead, there's a new thing called Microsoft Copilot.com, and it has a notebook, and I'll paste that in. And I think you have to do a login, but this is free, so you might click on that, see if that works for you. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, what was the January employment numbers? I'm going to paste that in here, and we'll run it. And this is also using OpenAI GPT, but it has the search engine connected to it. So this is kind of like the Bing search engine. And you can see it's going to respond. And then in January 24, and it's a little slow today. GPT was up late last night doing who knows what. And it starts giving me some analysis of what it, based on information. And it even tells me about sectors, so on and so forth. What's interesting, there's a few things that are interesting. One is I can continue the conversation here on the left, and I can ask, type additional sentences in, and it would go back and use what it found and what it talked about and incorporate my new questions to give me answers. What's cool about this is that if you've used Microsoft Edge and you used Bing Chat, this is a different layout flavor of that implementation. The cool parts here, though, is like I can now hover over these footnotes, right? And if I wanted to, I could actually click on them and go to those pages. Down here also, I can click on that stuff. We'll come back to this later. So this is what applications are beginning to look like, and where you want to start. I think where we want to start thinking what we can build with it, right? You ask questions, you have interactions. What kind of tools do we have that ChatGPT can call directly? What kind of tools can we provide externally? How can we get our real-time data, our external data into the product, into working with GPT? So now let's take a look at OpenAI and PowerShell. And this, just as a side note, this is a Polyglot interactive notebooks. I like not only demoing in this, but I like actually doing my work a lot in here. Up here, what's kind of cool, this is a markdown cell. Everything's based on cells. Now, Polyglot notebooks are based on the concept of Jupyter notebooks. Jupyter notebooks have been used in the Python world for 100 years, but it's all based on Python. And then Microsoft came along and said, well, let's base it on .NET. And when you do it on .NET, on the bottom right here, you can see it says PowerShell. This is the kind of kernel I'm using. If I click on that, these are the different kernels I can use. So F#, HTML, Mermaid. See, I can actually create cells based on these kernels, and then I could type in SQL straight away in here and then run it. And I'm going to use it to type in to do PowerShell. And you can think of this as being one big run space, as if I'm in the console, and every time I hit run and execute on the left-hand side, I execute that cell, it becomes part of the run space. So if I'm creating variables or loading dot sourcing stuff like I'm doing here, it'll be available to cells below. And it's just a very interesting way to work with things. The cool part is not only can you document your code with Markdown, but when I actually run things, it'll actually show me the results. And if when I save the notebook, I can actually pass it off to colleagues and friends and whatnot. And they can see the code without running it. They can see the results that I got. And then they can go ahead and make tweaks to the code if they want to see kind of results that they want. So it's a really interesting way to have like a live document with code. So I'm going to sit here. So PowerShell, my PowerShell AI Assistant is already installed. And my PowerShell AI Assistant module supports both OpenAI as well as Azure OpenAI. And I'm just going to I just ran this first script, which just does a few configuration pieces. And now I'm pointing to my OpenAI Azure stuff. I might change that back depending on the kind of the interaction I'm going to get. But I did deploy an Azure OpenAI piece, and I have the latest GPT-4. Sometimes it is slower because I do have the free version as being an MVP. So they throttle that because they have other customers that are paying. The second piece we'll get to, take a look at in a minute. So let's convert from one programming language to another. So here I have a PowerShell here string, and if I run that, nothing happens. We put the print hello world. Anybody guess what the programming language that is, right? Print hello world. Lots of different possible answers. And now in this next cell, I'm going to say, okay, in a string, I'm going to say convert to PowerShell, and I'm going to put that code in this prompt. And then I'm going to use my function or alias AI, and I'm going to pass that prompt. Now it's going up to Azure OpenAI, and it's already too slow. So we may have to go. That should have, I believe. All right, we're going to redo this. I'm going to restart that. And I restarted my kernel. That's the other thing too. This is like closing down the console and then restarting it. And up here, I'm just going to make a change and say reset OAI provider. Run that again. Let's see if I get a better result. Again, this is the box of chocolates. And now I'm going straight against OpenAI as opposed to my Azure instance. And it's a little quicker because that's a pay-as-you-go model. So did you have to configure Azure OpenAI AI especially? I'm not sure what you mean by especially, but yes, if you want it. So this AI command is part of the PowerShell AI Assistant. And if out of the box it works with OpenAI, if you configure it the way I showed, it will then go against your Azure implementations, your Azure deployments. So I hope that answers that question. So here I just converted that code from print hello world. I said, convert it to PowerShell, right? And write host looks good. And some people may say, well, write host is, when you do that, it's like killing puppies. But whatever, it got the right answer. Now I can come here and say the same thing and say, convert that to Rust, right? So this is showing how these models, now I just was talking to it about elephants. I could ask the same question here, AI, what can you tell me about elephants? And I'll get a similar response that we saw from the webpage. Now I'm actually doing it to actually work with development code. Okay, so did that, no problem. And because we're in PowerShell, right, once you wire up third-party solutions or REST APIs into PowerShell, things can really light up. So here's my prompt, right? Convert to whatever, just the code. I don't want to see usage or explanation. Sometimes it tells me like, hey, this is this and this and this. Here's how it works. And then I'm going to pass in that same piece of code initially, the print hello world. And I'm going to use a PowerShell array and say, all right, I want to do PowerShell, Rust, and Go. Those are three in an array. And I want to pipe it to for each, right? %. And then I'm going to do an AI, and I'm going to replace PowerShell, Rust, Go into that string, and we'll see what we get. So these will be 3 separate calls into OpenAI. And then there's the PowerShell, there's the Rust, and here's the Go, hopefully. And that's how you do it in Go, right? So when I started doing this, it's like, oh, I could start marrying a lot of the things I understand in PowerShell. And then once I blend it with this REST API, like I've done with 1,000 other REST APIs, I can really make the Christmas tree light up. Let's do some more things. So here's one, right? How many times you come up, you have a piece of curl and you want like, oh man, I really wish I could just do that in PowerShell, and I'll squint my eyes and okay, -X is this and -H is a header and there's the body, and how do I do this? So I'm just going to put this in a here string, right? And the beginning part of the prompt is, convert from curl to PowerShell. So let's find out what AI can do. Let's see if it gets it right. I'm going to pour myself something, a little water. And there you go. So folks can fact check me on this, right? Or fact check GPT. So does it invoke REST method? So it knew from curl to go to invoke REST method, maybe not a big leap. Knows the method post, puts in the proper URI, does the header, sets that all up nicely. It goes from a colon to an equal sign inside of a hash table, and then it actually encapsulates the body. It knows that's a -D parameter, and it puts it in as a JSON object. So that's pretty cool. Now, when I say that AI won't replace you, someone who knows how to use AI will. I can sit and convert curl, for example, all day long. And this can really work with very complicated ones. You got to remember, GPTs, LLMs, all of them have been trained on GitLab, GitHub, all the open source, all the public repos in the world, as well as even more. Meta has been trained on all Facebook code that they would want out in the wild, and the list goes on and on. So GPT really has seen billions of lines, or billions and billions of lines of code. So let's take a look at another one. English to regex. So I'm going to ask it to write a regex matching a URL. Okay, again, I'll let you folks fact check it. Now I can write, so I can say match a URL, match a phone number, match XYZ, and you can get deeper and more complicated. I've done other ones. This is just for demo purposes. Here's a cool way that you can use AI. You can say, write a regex pattern for the following, right? So I give it a list of phone numbers in different formats, and I say no explanation needed for usage, just a regex pattern. And let's run that up and see what happens. Who's the unknown user? Okay, and now I'll let you fact check that for me as well. And that looks pretty good. And I wouldn't take that code, right? That could easily be on Stack Overflow or a Google search, copy paste it. I would do some unit tests around it and so on. So question is, from your experience so far, how good is the code translation generation in comparison to translating it yourself? Great question. I find that when I started having better prompts, like write the regex, like if I take out the no explanation, I will get a whole bunch of explanations and not just the code, right? So if I was doing this and I didn't use that line, I would get a whole bunch of things I had to delete and whatnot. But as I improved my prompting, this is what this is. I'm building up my prompt engineering muscle. By learning how to do these techniques and learning how to prompt, I get what the code I want, and then I immediately know I'm going to take it and look at it. I let it do the heavy lifting for me, and hopefully we'll see a couple examples using GitHub Copilot in a bit. I find it excellent. I don't sit back and type in stuff and ask questions to GPT and think that, oh, it's going to give me 100% correction, a correct answer. I think, let's see how far it can take me. To be honest, when it first came out, right, in my opinion, it is good except for PowerShell code. Good point. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if I'm on board with that. You and I can talk offline or online afterwards. Yes, Python got us GPT, right? Python coders. So yes, this thing is really seems to be well tuned for things like Python and Rust and all that kind of stuff. PowerShell, not so much. And some of the people we think is because it's not that much stuff. It's good for PowerShell, but I'm not satisfied. I want to see your prompts, Patrick. So, yeah, and it's but the whole thing is that we're about to step into April 2024. We're only at the beginning. I can't wait to see what comes by build, Microsoft build, what OpenAI is going to drop. It's going to be, I think, mind-blowing. It may not be just all LLMs, but I think it's going to be mind-blowing what we see, its capabilities. We've seen it with Mistral. Devin, the engineer, came out, another new type of LLM that was trained differently, has other special magic sauce in it. Again, I'm just doing real quick demos. We might see a couple of things coming forward, but yes, I let it. I prompted in a way that I think I can get 80% to 100%, 60 to 100% of it doing the heavy lifting for me. Again, when it first came out in 2022 on the web, I would go up to it and say, tell me how I can export a CSV file into Excel using PowerShell. For those folks who know me, I wrote the import Excel module. So I wanted to see if it knew about my module. Out of the box, it didn't use it. It used the COM application approach, new object - COM application, fire up an Excel thing, all that kind of stuff. Lots of PowerShell is even written in Python. There you go. That's all. There you go. So it didn't work, and then I would have to kind of like really fine tune, so to speak. Probably the bad word. I had to up my prompt engineering muscle to get it to work, to look at my module, and then within a few months, all of a sudden, I would ask the same question, like, how do I do this CSV to Excel, PowerShell? And it would all of a sudden, it knew my module. I was like, oh, this thing's getting trained on more stuff. And then I was like, I could take it down a certain rabbit hole. All of a sudden, I would ask questions about I said, okay, here's a more complicated thing that I want to do. I want to set borders and colors and this, that, the other. And the funny thing to me is that it started hallucinating function names that were not in my module. And I would sit here and laugh. And I was like, that's ridiculous. How come it's making that stuff up? And then I looked at it and I was like, wow, those names are better than the ones I came up with. And that's when I started thinking, oh, maybe I can actually start by brainstorming with ChatGPT about how to name my functions better based on how I can articulate in a prompt what I want. And that became an eye-opening exercise, which got me even more excited about AI. So Clayton says, same with import Excel. I haven't seen the COM version in a while, thankfully. There you go. Well, the COM thing was good for its time. But anyway, so that's kind of a bit of a journey with the GPT stuff. So here's some other things that's cool, right? You can actually do things like, here's another prompt. This is just a string. Explain this PowerShell code. And again, it's not a complicated function. And the PowerShell function defines a function called greet, takes a parameter $name of type string, so it knows how to figure out it's being typed, data typed. Inside the function, it simply outputs a greeting message that includes the value of the parameter name. The output will be in the format of hello $name, where name is blah, blah, blah. That's a pretty good explanation. If somebody sent me that code or sent you that code and they ask you to write back what it does, how long would it take you? Take you a little bit, even though it's pretty simple. And would you be as thorough? I've actually seen this come back and say, show an example of calling greet with a person's name and then showing the output like hello Jane. So that's pretty cool. And to be honest, there's times that I'm on different social media platforms and people ask questions like this, not about a greet function. What I do is that they'll ask a question and I'll take it and I'll just drop it in GPT just to exercise my prompting capabilities as well as see what GPT comes up with. And it comes up with a great answer and I copy paste it back onto the social media platform. And then I say, hey, you could have just asked that question straight away to GPT. I find cool that it says simply. Well, there you go. Now let's switch it over a little bit, right? So that's some PowerShell, that's Rust Go, that's a couple of other things. So here I'm saying for SQL, create a customer table with the following columns. And there's a great example in Chrissy's book. She just dropped another chapter about interacting with SQL and GPT. And I wanted to create some columns, and I'm just going to give it ID, first name, blah, blah, no explanation needed or usage, just a SQL code. And I'm out. How cool is that, right? I think that's amazing. Now, not only that, but it figured out that ID is probably a primary key, right? And I think that's pretty slick. This is all, again, I'm doing simple examples. I'll do a deeper dive on Friday, not even using this, using something else, another approach. But start to let this plant seeds and help your imagination of what you can ask this thing. This is not a search engine. Let me type in 10 words and then start hunting through links and then ask more. Oh, I think I found this. Now let me go back. You can start having this do some reasoning. Speaking of which, all right, here's the race. I'm going to read this out. You figure out the answer. Let's see who gets it first. In a hockey game, Mitchell scored more points than William, but fewer points than Austin. Who scored the most points? Who scored the fewest? Go. And this is where, oh, this is pretty quick. So now that's a standard, I don't know if that's 8th, 10th grade question. I'm not sure. Austin scored the most. He scored more than Mitchell and William. Mitchell scored more points than William, but fewer than Austin. Therefore, the player who scored the fewest points was William. So you can double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. So you can ask questions like this. As a note, GPTs have become multimodal, which means that you can maybe make a list. Well, make a list of what? Tell him. What do you mean? So it's multimodal. You can even upload an image, right? You know how some of those things on social media where it says, hey, this person did things with 2 apples and 5 things and how many this. I take the actual, it's in an image. I actually take the image and drop it into GPT, usually on the web. And then I say, figure out the answer. And it does it. OCR, if it reads the image, figures out what it's asking, and it does the right thing. All right, so let's go back and play with Copilot one more time. This is and this happened, I've seen this and it's worked with gotta get my windows straightened out. So I've seen this work with ChatGPT Web. And this will show some prompting stuff as well as some cool things in this environment. Again, this is cool because this is free, right? ChatGPT Web costs more money. This version that's free doesn't have the code interpreter, but it does have the Bing search and a couple of other pieces. And that's the thing when you look, if you want to start saying, well, which LLM should I use? it's not all the LLMs are going to be ultimately, I think they're going to be commodities. I think they pretty much are. It's really going to be about the tools and user experiences that these big tech companies give us. So Anthropic has their Workbench, Gemini has its, Microsoft has their stuff in Azure. They have their playgrounds. OpenAI has the same thing. So that's going to become the more of the differentiator. Anyway, so list the first 5 presidents, VP and party, right? What is VP? Well, let's see if GPT can figure out. Now, I've sit here at times, I even make spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes. I don't put proper punctuation in. And you can see it already figures out that VP is vice presidents, right? So that's what it searched for. And GPT is really good at figuring out my mistakes and then figuring out the question I'm asking and then still coming up with the right answer. So this is kind of cool, right? Comes up with a bunch of stuff. I'm not sure why it says slow typing today. And again, the cool part is that it has, it does footnotes and whatnot. I'm going to stop responding. And what I'm going to do here, this is a technique that you can learn about, think about in your prompting. You can get the answers you want, and then you can do something like this, as a table. Let's see what this does. Now, so to go back, grab, knows what I'm asking for, and let's see what it does with as a table. And I'm not sure why. It figures today it's going to be slow. So they must be releasing some new pieces, my guess, or they've taken their canary testing some new releases. So if you notice really quick, if you squinted, that was Markdown. So it comes back, when you say as a table, it comes back in Markdown. And now I have a nice little table, right? And I get the footnotes and all that good stuff. Let it finish responding. Come on, you're finished. There you go. So it's putting up the different links. So now I can actually click. Now, sometimes when you do this, it'll actually come back with actual pictures of the president. And this works with any list. And if I want, I can get further information by clicking on the links. Same thing down here. Even more cool is I can copy this. So I copied that data. And if I come in back into Visual Studio Code, so we can see it comes up as Markdown, and Visual Studio Code recognizes it Markdown. So if I wanted to, I can actually then render it. So I use this a lot when I'm trying to come up with stuff, or I'm going to do some documentation or about a bunch of different things. You know, I changed it from looking for vice presidents for presidents. I use other stuff, but I use the technique as table, so I can get this nice Markdown. Once again, I'll reiterate, AI will not replace you. Someone who knows how to use it will, because I can sit here and say as table on 5 different things, get my Markdown, produce my documentation, and I'm off to the races. Let's take a look. I can also export what I see here, drop this button, I can export it to Word, PDF, or text, right? So I'm done. So if I wanted to, I could actually build up a whole bunch of things on the left. I could call it whatever, presidents, cars, policies, whatever it is, have it dump out what I want. I'm not going to go overboard because GPT has contextual limitations, but I can get all that stuff done, and then I can have it export straight to the product, PDFs if I want to send it off to management or whatever. I can also do cool things like this. I can click share, and then I can copy this link to this conversation, and then I can post on the socials that I want to, or they give you a bunch that you can use straight away. So if I wanted to post this to LinkedIn, people would get a link, and when they click on the link, they would come into what you see here, right? So that's pretty cool. You can take this and further search on Bing. Now, what's really slick is if you notice up here on the right, there's a button that appears after saying as that. It says edit in Excel, right? So let's click on that. Make sure I click it. And it takes me off to live OneDrive, and it just dropped all that information into Excel. Makes me happy because then I can copy and save this to the file, and then I can use my modules on it to do all kinds of stuff on it. I can slice and dice. Okay, so now what I just showed you, you can do with ChatGPT Web. You can do, you're not going to get the Excel tab piece, but you get pretty much everything else, and includes, because it does do searches, it will give you certain things like the links and whatnot. Anthropic and those other companies also provide the same stuff. So let's look at it in using PowerShell. I'll do the same thing, list first 5 presidents, VP, party in the table. So now I'm going against the latest OpenAI, all through code, all through a REST interface. And that's what that does. So I have access to the same GPT models that Microsoft is offering or OpenAI is offering in the ChatGPT web. In addition, I'm going to run that one more time. And I wrote something called invoke render markdown because, again, I'm in PowerShell. And since the Polyglot notebook is based on .NET, I can tap into that code because that's what PowerShell is great at. I've tapped into the OpenAI code like this. I don't get it. Okay. And so now I can get a nice rendering right here. Okay. Pretty cool. All right. So it's 12:47. I've got at least another 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little longer stuff for demos. So what you've just seen is I showed using GPT and LLMs in different flavors. In OpenAI web page, in the notebook page from Microsoft, it would be the same thing in their chat, Bing chat, showing you how to use how AI function, alias from the module connects. And this would work also in the playgrounds for OpenAI and for Azure OpenAI. So you're learning about prompting, what can you do with it, and the core thing, the fundamental foundation is that it's all about prompt engineering, right? So if you know how to ask what you want, and it's getting better that you can be even more minimalistic than this, which I don't recommend, but you can get very minimal, and you can then wire up different tools, and these prompts will work across pretty much any LLM. Each LLM is going to have their own tuning, training, special sauce, so on and so forth. And the cool part is that you can do things like have it work with code. So let's take a look at this at the command line. So now I've done this here. So let's see if I can bring up this. It's over here. And I'll start some copy paste. So I have a directory, right? And I have a bunch of files checked out, right? So that's a standard Git status. Some people may be familiar with this. So what's cool is the AI, you can also pipe to it. So I support piping anything, pretty much all text mostly, I guess. So I'm going to do the same Git status, but now I'm going to pipe it to AI, and I'm going to say, write me a detailed commit message for these changes. So that message you see up top is going to get sent to ChatGPT. And it's going to say add untracked files to be committed. It tells me the files. These files contain important information for the project, so it gets a little fancy. And off it goes to the races. Now, out of the box, all the functions that I've enabled work as a default with GPT 3.5. I didn't try this lately, but so you can choose. I dynamically show you what different models you can use. If I chose GPT-4 or Turbo, I would get a much different answer. I wouldn't, not much different, but I'd get a different answer and probably a little better. So this is how I start to use, like, oh, I can start taking stuff. I can do, DIRs, or I can do a get process, and I can pipe it into the AI function, and then I write my prompt over here based on the data that's coming in. Now, be forewarned, all this stuff, in this case, this stuff is going up to OpenAI. If you configure it to work with Azure OpenAI, then your data is going to an enterprise-ready, secured environment in Azure, right? And these what I'm doing here would work against the Azure instance as well. So, but out of the box, it goes against OpenAI. They've committed to not using your prompts and your data, blah, 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 blah. If you're not comfortable with it, don't do this at home. Now, I just did a video yesterday, and I posted it on the socials, and this one is really cool, I think. So, I'm biased. So if I put this piece of code in here, right, and I said, hey, can you explain what that is? Well, I have a alias this is in, I can't even spell my own function. Explain this, right? It's actually taking the last, in this configuration, it's taking the last command you did from your history, and I'm passing that up to OpenAI, and OpenAI came back, and I'm displaying it. Now, there's a couple pieces of magic I did here. I try and detect, I look to see if you have a package called Glow, G-L-O-W. It's a Go package, right? And what it does is it takes Markdown and it renders it. See how nice it renders it. So I checked that for you. Now, this is what I can get by just typing commands at the command line. So if I type in 1 divided by 0, right, we all know what happens, right? We have a problem. Now, when I say explain again, it's not reading the error message, although I can make it do that. It's just reading the 1 divided by 0. And GPT comes back and says, when you do that, you'll get an error stating attempting to divide by 0. So it's already reasoning about the code itself. Now, 1 divided by 0 is simple. If I start going in doing weird, really expanding on this, I'm not going to get the answers that I like. Glow, love it. Yep, install Glow. It's awesome. Now, so let's talk about a little bit what's under the covers behind what OpenAI and the things that I ported from the Python SDK and how that all works. Okay, so we're at 12:52. We're definitely going to go over, even in with the basic presentation. My apologies. I hope folks can hang out. Look at that. I already missed one command. So one of the things you can do is you can simply do something called new OAI assistant. Now, when I ported this from Python, Python has, a standard object-oriented kind of approach to their naming. They use fluent APIs and whatnot. So it's like, base.create.assistant.new or something like that. So I looked at all that good stuff, and then I said, okay, new OAI assistant works better in the PowerShell space. But it's that simple. And I just created an assistant. Now an assistant, now I created 2 assistants, which is fine. So that's what comes back from the server. So now I've just created an assistant up on the server, and I'm good to go, right? And that would be like setting a system message or your user message, like, some of the things I said before, passing in this data and, give me a nice commit message for this. In fact, under the covers, it's creating a new assistant, putting that information up in the assistant as a message, blah, blah, blah. It used this approach, okay? So next up, what we want to do, that's one primitive. So there's 3 more. The next one is a thread. And I'm just going to talk about this. You don't have to memorize it yet. But so now you have an assistant, I have a thread, and you can think of a thread as how I'm chatting with OpenAI, with a model. Go to screen. The next one I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a message up there. Okay, so $chat. So I'm said, okay, create a message. I want to use the thread I just created with its ID, and I want to ask what is the capital of France. So far, I've just created an assistant, spun up a thread, and I put a message on the thread. If we want to get the model to respond, we have to run it. So here's how you do a run. And let's take a look at run. So run takes a thread and it takes an assistant. And we can see what's here. We can see that the message, that whole chat got queued. So it's getting ready to come back with a response. So what's really cool about this is twofold. When you do this stuff, none of this is happening on your machine, right? This is all happening in the cloud. That may be good or bad for you. But again, this all works in Azure. So if I was pointing to my Azure instance, I'd be in a completely secure DoD capable cloud provider. So this is all happening in the cloud. I can actually now turn my machine off, go grab lunch, whatever I'm going to do, and I can come back and I can then get the information later based on what this chat thread did. So those are 2 concepts that are pretty cool. Also, they've done, I think, a brilliant job of setting up, partitioning the API to make this really interesting of how you can develop applications or develop PowerShell scripts and stuff around it. Now let's, the way that I can now say, well, let me take that thread and take a look at it. There we go. And we can take a look at data, and I can see that it's completed. Okay, so now what do I do? So we know it completed. And then there's how do you retrieve a message? Now, if you remember, I asked, what is the capital of France? So notice I said, go after the $M data when I get the messages back. So this is the messages data. And here I can see the assistant responded to my user question. Well, all that information is in the content. So PowerShell being what it is, I can unroll these arrays very nicely. And now I can start seeing, oh, what is the capital of France? And the capital of France is Paris. So we see that this chat completed, and we got our answer back. And of course, I can do text, and we'll do value. Now you notice it's in reverse order, right? So my question's at the beginning, and the response. It does that because if you're doing a lot of chatting with the models within your thread, it always puts the last thing from you or from the assistant, et cetera, on as first rather than as last. That way it's easy to just pull it off the stack, so to speak. So the other cool thing about this is something called Show OAI Playground webpage. This is the playground, right? And it's very similar in Azure. And what's cool is if I click on assistants, okay, I actually remember I created 2 assistants accidentally. And we'll take a look at it in the playground. And yep. So this is exactly right. So it was just a basic bare bones. I didn't name it. I didn't give it instructions. I defaulted to the Turbo 3.5 model, which is the least expensive. And then there's a whole bunch of other cool things here, which we may have time to get into, which is part of the last demo. So what's nice is I can set up a bunch of assistants. I can give it names. I can give it all kinds of instructions. You're a geography tutor, you're a math tutor, you're an expert at PowerShell, you're an expert in Python. And then I can ask questions straight away against that setup assistant with all those prompts set up. What is the capital of Spain? I can click the run button. Tells me what I'm talking about. And there we go, right? I can then rename this thing to geography. And that should save it. And then I can say, type in Sweden. No, let's go with Austria. Right. And because I said, what is the capital of Spain? Just typing the word Austria, it comes back with the right capital, being Vienna. It knows I'm asking about capitals because it determined and reasoned that from the conversation we had. And this is really begins the power of what this interactive communication is. Again, the previous SDK I ported, they didn't have this capability. I had to keep track of all the messages and keep them in arrays, and you had to pass the whole thing back up to the model each time, and it was fine, but it was like, so they've just basically removed that. I made it even super easy so you can do some really slick stuff. So the unknown user says, this looks pretty complicated. Did you wrap the complexity under that AI and explain commandlets? Yes. This may look complicated at the moment, but if you play with it for less than 5 hours, you'll really begin to get it. And yes, the AI command and the explain command, when I type in something like that, let's do that. I'm actually creating an assistant. I create a thread. I put the message on the thread. I run it. I wait for it to complete, and then I print out the information. So AI wraps that up and does a little bit of extra stuff. You can take a look at that.
Just a short interruption, yeah. Doug. As we have 6 o'clock now, maybe some people need to leave. At the end of the session, I will ask you what are the pieces you need to do to start off if you haven't used anything of that. So if attendees are looking for that question, so you get this information. If you need to start off, we get a list of things you need to do to use all that you see today. So please go ahead.
Sure. Good point. So yes, AI handles all of those function calls. Now it seems like it took me a while to get like, what are they doing? I don't understand what you're talking about. How do I get this to work? And I've wrapped that up in a lot of abstractions And those abstractions that I wrapped them up into are based on a lot of the guidance from the OpenAI folks. So I'm inventing some things, but not really. And then, yes, I'm converting it all to PowerShell. It is, don't think it's so complicated you can't figure it out if you want to be able to use it. And I'll show you a couple of things that you can use out of the box. So that's how you do. It's really cool. I can sit here all day and I can say things like new OAI assistant. Do I have anything cool? Yeah, I do, but I'll just use this. Name equal SQL expert. Oops, yeah, so we'll just put that as that. And then I can say instructions, right? This is a prompt. Give SQL responses at work. And yes, there's a bunch of things you can do on here. You can add tools like the interpreter and whatnot. You can upload files, which we might see in the last demo, right? And it's that simple to create that. And then when I go back over here to the playground, okay, there's my SQL expert. Now, if I want, I can start asking questions here, or I can come here and use that assistant with that ID, right? So for example, I have something called invoke simple question. Again, this is abstracting all that stuff away. And so this is a SQL one. And I'm not going to spell it correctly. We'll do it this way. Select star from X. And I probably wouldn't have to correct that. Dude. So I've wrapped it, show you the question, select star from X, retrieves all the columns and rows from the table named X, fetches all the data. So now I have an assistant that's always out there, always ready, and I can give that to folks. And I have an abstraction called invoke simple question, where I can say, you can specify the assistant that you want to work with and then pose your question. Again, I can take this and wrap it up in another function or in a PowerShell script, and I can have it point to the PowerShell expert to do whatever I want. And by having some of this stuff, if I was asking it to do code conversions, I could do all the code conversions. I could put it in a file. Like I could say, here's all my Python, for example, if you do that kind of stuff. And I want to convert that all from Python into PowerShell. Because I'm working in PowerShell, I can do a dir, I can cat or do get content on all those files, pipe them into AI or invoke simple question, take the results and then create new files from it that are all .ps1s. And then I can inspect it and figure out, is it correct or is it not correct? Again, the models are getting unbelievably good at all this stuff, even for PowerShell. So again, let your imagination run, how you want to do it. The fact that PowerShell AI Assistant now sits right in your console or your scripts, lots of cool things you can do with it. Just to also point out, this is, I have been experimenting for quite a while, putting all the stuff up in Azure Functions as well as GitHub Assistants. So it opens up the door to even cooler stuff. Anyway, so it's 104. Now, I also have something called clear all OA items. So I just deleted all the work we just did. And I have no assistants anymore. So this is how I kind of sit here and iterate and test and try ideas, and then I just can clean things up. I also have you can have different keys set up inside of OpenAI, as well as different deployments inside of Azure OpenAI. So you can have a test one, you can have a production one, so to speak, so you're not cleaning out the wrong thing. Again, all the different commands work with assistants, threads, and runs, how you're familiar with the same verb, noun commands, all the things you've done in PowerShell. Are assistants staying forever in my OpenAI subscription, or do I need to delete them if not needed anymore? Assistants, assistants will stay around forever. I just did the clear item and that deletes them. But yes, these assistants will stay around forever, which is good in a lot of ways, right? Because then I can hand those out to other people, or I can depend on them in code that I run every day, right? So yes, they're there forever. Threads are there forever. So where you retrieve the messages from, those threads live on. So if you have, so later on, you can actually go back a month later, 2 months later, and say, hey, go get those messages we did on back on XYZ. And not, you can't do, you know, queries on like, hey, which threads did I run 2 months ago? I think that's coming. So we'll see. But yes, assistants will stay around. Oh, I already answered the question. Excellent. Or I don't know. Okay. Now, if we go into documentation real quick, and I'll probably get the wrong one. We'll take a look. Okay. Notice it says beta. What we're looking at here is all beta. Now, I had to rewrite. So I ported the first SDK. It lived for about 6 months. And then they came out with this whole new way of doing things. This feels like it's going to be the future. I don't think they're going to get rid of this. I think this is their stake in the ground, and they're saying this is how we're going to do things going forward. Microsoft is rolling this out to Azure, and they're wrapping all kinds of UX around it. So this is here to stay. And the interesting thing to me is Gemini and Claude, those LLMs as well as Mistral, they're all using the old version the old version approach that OpenAI introduced last year. So in my opinion, they're already behind the game. You have to do token counting, trimming, all this other kind of stuff. That's if you want to know how this stuff works underneath. Now, let's wrap this up. It's 1:07. And I'll just say again, we are barely putting our toes in the water with what we're looking at. So the last thing I wanted to show, if I can get to the right, wherever I have it, there we go. Let's see. Yep, did that. Is, and this is what I'm going to go deeper on. That's cool. I'm going to go deeper on this on Friday, right? I'm going to pull it apart, show you how it works, show you how to build your own, give you ideas of how to apply it to things that you want to work with. And you may not get a spark of an idea for a day, a week, a month, a couple of months. Yeah, it's new stuff to get your head around. I mean, you got to understand prompt engineering, what's an LLM. I don't have any intuition about this stuff, but I feel that this is really a worthwhile endeavor to get involved with. So let's take a look at, so here, maybe I'll go again. Yeah, I'm not going to go against the Azure. Reload that so it goes against OpenAI directly. So let me run this up because it's going to take a bit. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the sales data, right? So a simple CSV file. It's got 4 columns, 9 data points. And, you know, I want to say, let's get rid of that. So I'm going to take this data. I'm going to upload it to OpenAI. I'm going to create an assistant, as we saw. I'm going to attach that file to the assistant. It's going to go through a thread. We'll see that. And I'm going to just ask a very minimalistic, low energy prompt. So who knows what we're going to get back. Do data science on the attached data. Okay, whatever that means. I'm not going to be. We're going to just toss it to the wind. So this will take a bit because it has to take the file, crack it open, a whole bunch of things. Let's run that up. And so down here, you can see, I don't know, right? So it just uploaded the file, sales CSV, and now it's waiting for it to complete. Oh, that's sad. Let's try it again. This is the, sometimes you don't know what you're going to get out of the chocolate box. So I'm running it again. So it's going to create the assistant again. It's going to upload the file again, and maybe it'll be happier. And let's take a look at the actual script. Good, it's running a little bit better. And yes, I could go back and debug and figure out why it didn't work, and it still may not work. Anyway, so yes, this will look a little bit more complicated, but basically, right, so I get the, you pass in sales CSV, and I do a DIR on that, and invoke upload, the OAI upload takes oh, it worked, excellent. So it takes, right, it gets the value from pipeline, and it uploads that one file. If I gave it a star CSV, it would upload all my CSVs. On Azure, you can do a maximum of 20 files, up to 512 megabytes, I think it is. OpenAI does even more. That restriction will be lifted as time goes on. The more you pay, the more you get. And I'm just going to say, I want this, I'm just going to name it Data Science Assistant. Here are the instructions. You're an expert data scientist. Please analyze the data, provide insights and charts, and answer the questions. Do not ask for confirmation, just do it. Here I'm showing you that you can enable the code interpreter. This is what I alluded to earlier. This actually spins up a Python development environment. The chart you're about to see is GPT actually created Python code to get the answers and to do analysis. And here I am, I'm attaching the files that I uploaded to that assistant. Then I do the new assistant. I do something called a new thread query, which does a lot of the magic underneath, which it spins up a thread, sets everything up, and then does the run. As well as, so it does the run, it takes your user input, which is do data science on this, waits for it to complete. And right now you have to poll and say, oh, are you done? Every couple seconds, are you done? Are you done? Are you done? That's just been updated to be a streaming mechanism, so you don't have to poll. And once it's done, I get all the messages, and then I just do a little magic on the message using good old PowerShell, right? I can say, go after the data content and anything with an image file, get the ID. And then I have a function called get OAI file content, and I download the file, and that's the files you see here, and I call it image 1, 2, and 3. Now, this is just for a quick demo purposes. I would make this much more robust, but let's take a look at from that CSV file. Let's see what it did. Yeah, I'm in. So there's a pair plot of the numerical values of units and price, okay? Let's take a look at another image. Total number of units sold in each region. That looks correct to me. So if you remember, here's the preview, right? So I had multiple regions, multiple states. So it knew how to roll up into, took all the unique ones and rolled it up correctly. And then we can take a look at the last one. Oops. And there's a distribution of prices. Now, that was from a simple little question. You know, do data science on this file, right? Let's take it one step further. And then we can wrap up. And I can do something like get OAI message, right? And we'll go for the thread ID. And that's the thread ID. And let's capture that in the variable $M. And in the data, we can see a lot of stuff happened, right? A whole bunch of messages. And now, instead of pulling out the image ID, I'm going to go and grab the content, text, value. And I'm going to put that on the clipboard with a clip. And I'm going to drop it in here so we can see it better. And this is pretty cool. So it's marked down, so I can do Control KV. And this is the conversation. And I didn't do it in order, so I think maybe I sorted it. I apologize. So it's just, so this is our intern telling, as being set up as a data scientist, telling us what they're doing, and telling about what it's going to, yeah, it's from bottom up. So, right, telling what it's going to visualize, even talks about like a typical data scientist, tells us the average, average units sold, average price, minimum, maximum. That's typical stuff you do in this data science. And then let's answer specific, it came up with specific questions to answer, and it came up with the actual images that we saw. Now, what's cool is, we'll go back here for a second. Go back to content, and we'll do an FT. Now, I'm doing this all in PowerShell, right? So I'm using format tables. So I'm looking at it like a database, but I'm actually working with responses from an LLM. This is where I like to live, in the console, doing this kind of stuff, whether I'm doing SQL, Excel, whatever. So now you can see here, there's a bunch of texts and a bunch of images. What's really cool is that when the text comes out and talks about a pair plot, that's the image. Now, I could have, if I got really cool, specific with my prompt, I could have said, make this as a one markdown file, and it would take all of its commentary and intersperse the images correctly into that text file that was marked down and make it as a downloadable piece. I have examples of that as well. So that's where your imagination can really run wild. So now I have a data science script this simple that I can ask any question to, pass in any data. The real cool part is I'm doing CSV, but I can also pass up Excel files. I can pass up 3 sales files in CSV format, 4 customer files in XLS. If there's multiple sheets in the XLSS, it can handle that too. Any questions? Sorry for going so quickly. Marco is late. Perfect timing, Marco. Yes, I think Roman and those folks are going to share the video later.
Yeah, we will share the video. I guess everybody has a million questions right now, but they probably don't have the time.
Well, I'm done. I got to go. Bye-bye. See you.
Yeah. I have 2 final questions. So if I want to go from 0 to hero, what are the 3 steps to get started and to do all the things you did, let's say, within a few days or so? Is this okay, this is the answer already. Install the module, get an OpenAI key, and
you're done.
And I'm done.
Then,
okay.
And then show up on Friday, and I'll go deeply how to do that last part.
Okay, good. That's a little bit of advertising. We we appreciate that. I probably will join. And the demo code is on your GitHub repo, or?
I have not pushed that yet, but I will be pushing it in the examples file. So let me just
probably you could send it also to me, and I put it on the Experts Live GitHub repo. So just to share it somewhere that people can follow the video and maybe try it on their own.
Absolutely, I'll put it up here. I also have augmented generation examples, but I'll put this one up as a code interpreter example, and I'll send you the link. GPT could not do this. Patrick, we're on different sides of the argument. GPT absolutely can do this.
Your session, no. Your session couldn't do that.
Thank you. Fair enough. I couldn't do the session, but everything you see here, I was doing with ChatGPT Web and figuring things like that out. Yes. Cool. So yeah, and the cool thing is, again, every big tech firm is providing this with their flavor of the large language model. Good presentation, very cool. Glad you liked it, Andy. Yeah, I try to do live streams once or twice a month, and I cover some new topics around this stuff. So if you're on my meetup page, the New York City PowerShell group, look for, or if you're on the socials, I post on LinkedIn and X platform when I'm going to do these things. This technology is unbelievable, and it needs to be in everybody's toolbox. And I'm not just, I'm not here to, I'm not a cheerleader. This is serious stuff.
We hope that a few people will now start using it, and we all stand on the shoulders of giants. So now we stand on yours and can continue and make our life easier, better, faster, and more effective. I don't know whatever. Thank you so much for joining us. What really fantastic, and for all the preparation. And we will provide the recording afterwards on our website, which has also a link, and I think I can share now my last slide here. Where is it? Yeah. So at expertslive.at, you will see past events, and there are the cafes, and they will share the video and all the additional content we have created. Okay. Again, thank you very much. Thanks for joining, everybody. And if there are no more questions in the chat, you can reach us on social media or at expertslive.at. And we're glad we had you there. I had fun. I hope also the other ones. Thanks again, Doug. And
thank you,
have
Roman.
a nice day, evening, afternoon, or whatever, in which time zone you are. Goodbye.